Yeah, so yesterday's video was probably the most low effort thing I've made in a while. However, the eagle-eyed amongst you among us might have noticed some very subtle foreshadowing for this video. I love plagiarism. Nothing gives me the jolt of energy I need to see through the day quite like violating the IP rights of corporations. For legal reasons, this is a joke. Something I've wanted to try figuring out how to do for a while is making a full motion video game. One of those games in the style of stuff like Contradiction or Tex Murphy, where the game is acted out by like real world people, an interactive telenovela almost.
True.
But I don't have the production capacity, money, time, effort, intellect, skill, attention span, money, or time to go through the process of making something like that. Fortunately though, a quick précis right out of the gate, this is a software development experiment rather than something I'm going to release. If you want to play in space with Markiplier, the only place you can do it is on the Markiplier YouTube channel. I'm not trying to get sued here. Having said that, because of the nature of this video, there may be some spoilers for In Space if you haven't played bits of it already, so pin that in your brain somewhere, I guess. I'm not going to use that much footage from it because I don't want to get DMCA'd or whatever. This is mostly just going to be about the code implementation of how I did it. So at first I thought about using Unity because this is like a game or whatever and I make games in Unity all the time, occasionally. However, this doesn't really work because in order to hook up the content to Unity's video player, I'd need to lawfully acquire the raw video files, which YouTube, suffice to say, does not permit in its terms of service. Besides which, to store all that video data at sufficient quality that it doesn't look like something out of Lego Island 2 would take up so much disk space that it would be a waste of time anyway. So we need to try a different approach. What YouTube does allow is for you to embed videos on other websites. So if we could use the embed information from the videos and transfer that into the game instead, we could stream the videos into the game from YouTube over the internet without breaking any rules or anything. I think. I don't know, I'm not a lawyer. Trying to get HTML into Unity is a losing battle though, so we'll need to not use that for the purpose of this. There is probably a way to inject HTML into Unity, maybe when you're using the WebGL context or whatever, but I can't really be bothered with all that, so no. We did use Electron for the Jax Films No Stash Generator project the other day, and Electron is a desktop app creation runtime that uses HTML, so that feels like it would be a pretty good option for a project like this. The embed method has some obvious advantages. The resulting app will be incredibly lightweight and easy to boot up on even lower end computers. The API for interacting with the player is also relatively powerful and can handle most of the things we'd need to be able to do in normal games, changing the volume and so on. Using this system does come with certain limitations though. For one thing, every time a new video boots up in the embed, you see the YouTube logo and the name of the video. That is avoidable if you know what you're doing and have a distinct lack of ethics. Basically, the solution is to pass the embed request a resolution that's greater than the size of the window and then point the viewport, basically like the camera, I guess, to the middle so that only the video is visible. The other obvious issue is the game will require a persistent internet connection in order to work, but I have Ethernet and I'm the only person who will ever play it, so this is something I can live with. So, no time like the present. Here's the brief, what we're aiming to do. We want a main menu, ideally, something with a bunch of buttons you can press to get options and whatnot. I'd also like the player to be able to pause the game and get a similar menu, something like that. Achievements? I don't know. Scene missing. Sounds easy enough, I said, lying. Let's get started. As with the previous thing, I began by creating a new Electron project through the command line because this is the 1800s. Next, we need to figure out how the player is going to navigate through the video. In the real thing on the YouTube website, the player uses end cards, which are basically just fancy rectangular buttons you can press that take you to another video. They're most commonly used by people on the site to point you at other videos by them you can watch once you've finished one. The eagle-eyed amongst you would have noticed some very interesting foreshadowing for this in the Sal video, for example. We can't use those end cards ourselves though. If we click on them inside an Electron window, it'll open the video in a separate window and it'll just look weird and gross. This is bad UX design, I say, as though I know what UX means. Well, you say, why can't we just put in our own UI? Well, yes, we can. We can overlay elements on the screen that the player can click on and then pass those elements data to tell them what video to go to next. Additionally, because of the robust YouTube embed API I was talking about earlier, we can actually use a JavaScript function to change what video the embedded player is displaying, meaning we get a very smooth transition from one clip to the next. That's fine as far as it goes, but if we aren't using the end cards, I'd quite like to get rid of them. Tragically though, that's impossible. There's no option to disable them in the YouTube API, and because the embed uses what's called an iframe, which is basically a window to another website, we can't change any of the insides because, I don't think YouTube would like it if I messed with their stuff. Our only real option is to just place the elements over the top of the end cards and tell them to appear just before so that the end cards themselves are never visible and can't be clicked. I think this looks fine. As for the elements themselves, we're going back to my trusted method for data storage, handwriting over 200 lines of obtuse JSON file. The JSON data contains a reference to every video in the in-space canon, and each reference itself contains a reference to when the choice elements appear, what they should say, and where they should go. This lets us inter-reference inside this JSON file to go from one video to another, and surprisingly enough, it does work pretty well. Here's the code for how it does that if you give it even remotest care in 2005. But I hear you ask, how does the video know to display our UI at all? Well, relax, I'm getting to that. Seriously, can you give me a second? What's wrong with every 1 second we ask the video player to tell us what the current timestamp is. That request returns a number of seconds since the start of the current video, and then we can compare that timestamp with the choice timestamp we've plugged into our JSON file. If the timestamp from the video is greater than the timestamp in our file, we show the elements at a given XY position, also in the file. And that's actually basically it. To be honest, the gameplay loop is implemented. We can go from one video to the next, make choices, get endings, and so on. But I would quite like to implement achievements. So let's implement achievements. We can do that in the same way we did the videos themselves, creating an achievement JSON file with a reference to all our achievements, and then in the video file telling the system which achievement to display and at what time. With a little CSS nonsense and adding some funny haha images, we can get all the achievements we want. That's not the only element we need to do though. I'd quite like players to retain their achievements between play sessions. This too is quite easy. We create a text file that contains a list of all the achievements they've got, and then when we get to the bit where we give the player the achievement, we can check whether that achievement is already in the save file, and if it is, ignore it entirely. If it isn't, we can add it to the file and then read it later. And that's it. I added a few more flourishes, a little sound effect that plays when you click on the boxes, a main menu that really captures that I pirated this game from a website hosted on an offshore oil rig vibe, and even some main menu music. I wanted to add a flowchart a la Zero Escape, but this project is taking way too long as it is, and since this is basically a filler episode for other stuff I want to do, I think I'm about done with it. If you'd like to play this for yourself, that sucks.